Welcome to episode 54 of the Lone Hockey Podcast. For today, I want to talk about a player who unfortunately tragically passed recently, and that is Johnny Gaudreau. And when you look back at Johnny Gaudreau's career, and obviously the accident and what happened was so unorthodox, and it's really hard to put into words when you really try to describe it. But when you look back on Gaudreau's career, a very legendary player, and I wanted to take this time to really dive deeper into his actual style of play and how special he actually was. Because for a player who's 5'9", it's very rare for those type of players to even make the NHL. And he was slight; he didn't have necessarily a sturdy physical frame or anything per se. He was a slight player. He's 5'9", so naturally there are going to be a lot of doubters and a lot of haters, but with him and Gaudreau's style of play, he was still able to evolve throughout the years in the NHL. It really allowed him to transform his game, and he was able to adapt over time and continue to get better in the league. And it's so interesting because you don't usually see players like that. You usually see players who are that stature, that height, sometimes fall off, especially in the early years. You don't usually see them maintain that consistency. So it's easy to talk about Gaudreau because of the accident that happened. And again, it's really unfortunate that it did happen. But when you really dive deeper into his game, you get really more fascinated by it. And it's it's so interesting to study. And what I really like about his game is how he paved the path for smaller players and how he's able to create a sense of camaraderie for smaller players. And ever since he was in the USHL, ever since he was in the NCAA, ever since he was in the NHL, he always seemed to find a way, no matter what it was. So diving deep into his playing style, his manipulation and deception with the puck are two things that really stood out to me the most because for a smaller player, you have to have manipulation, deception, especially with your puck skills and being able to maneuver quickly with the puck, being able to have agility in your puck skills, and being able to maneuver so fast because the NHL requires instincts. You can't necessarily read and react. So Gaudreau is able to adapt so fast in the NHL because he understood the instincts. He understood playmaking instincts. He understood how to make a crisp first pass, but he understood how to be in and around the crease, be around the net, be around in anticipation of passes, be around in anticipation of rebounds, be around in anticipation of scoring chances. So he had a knack for creating offense in off puck manners and on puck manners. And that's one of the most translatable components when talking about his game because his off puck play, again, he anticipated plays and sequences so well, and he's so good at doing it so consistently in Calgary and in Columbus. And with his style of play, with his puck skills, and even in recent years, you see him gain a little bit of an extra gear in terms of pace and actual speed to his decision making and how he's able to actually get the top end speed more often. And that really allowed him to control his crossover usage a little bit more. So through neutral ice, he was expending more energy in terms of crossovers in an efficient way. He was able to slice and dice through guys naturally like he does at any level, but he was more efficient with how he was using his skating and ability to translate that to creating offense and creating scoring chances, not only off the rush, but in zone offensively. And Gaudreau is so special at being able to create in unorthodox ways. He could create something out of nothing, and he was so good in tight spaces, so good in tight quarters. I wrote about it in my article today, where I highlighted a few goals of mine that were favorites in terms of the ones that I really liked the most in watching him. And there was a Boston College one where he scored the national championship. He was getting backtracked by a guy and he had to maintain close puck control because the back checker, if he was a little bit off in terms of how he was handling the puck, and if the puck was a little bit to the side of him, a little bit further, or if it was too far in front of him, whatever it may be, then it would cause a little bit more issues because he wouldn't necessarily have the ability to get to that. So then on the entry, he maneuvered backhand or forehand, and then he maneuvered back to the backhand with a manipulation beat through the stick of the defenseman, and he scored off his backhand on the far side of the goalie. So he did a really good effort there. And then there were a few other goals, like the Game 7 goal when he was with Calgary against Dallas to knock out Dallas in advance. I believe it was to the second round that year in 2022. That was another special one. And then in Columbus, where he scored against Vancouver, an end-to-end goal also against Vancouver. He scored his first NHL goal when he was with Calgary. and he scored his first NHL game then. He was wearing number 53, not 13, but still. So that Columbus goal against Vancouver was so intriguing about that. The decision making, the processing, the cognitive perception of the play. He was about to regroup going back, right? So he was about to regroup going back because he realized Vancouver's on a change. And he also realized that he could give Columbus a change. So he was almost about to pass back and carry the puck back, but he realized Vancouver still had a forward inside their D zone. So he didn't turn back. Instead, he turned the other way, accelerated through the neutral zone, gained entry with Vancouver's forwards changing. So that left the two defensemen vulnerable. So he was attacking 1v2 essentially on the entry. And then he maneuvers over to the strong side. Strong side D tries to cut him off with his stick and body position. Doesn't work. Gaudreau maintains cruising speed, so he keeps his feet flat on the ice, and then he's able to maneuver around the defenseman, maneuver around the rest of the strong side of the play, maneuver around the backside of the net, and then create a wraparound goal out of it. It was so gorgeous, and I believe he scored on Spencer Martin at that time. But it was such a fascinating goal. It was such a highlight reel in terms of how he was able to create perception of that moment and how he was able to maintain that poise there, but how he was able to change gears so fast. And that was a testament because in the back half of his career, I've seen a lot more change of gear style pace to his game. When he was a younger player, you would see some of that sometimes, but it'd be a little inconsistent in terms of his neutral zone play. What I liked in the back half of his career and how he's developed further in the NHL, his cognitive perception has continued to get better. So he's understood plays in the moment, and he hasn't gotten too panicked with what's going on in those situations. And the ability to neutral zone reload with speed and the ability to gain a step on defenseman with speed consistently has allowed him to really pop. And obviously, a few years ago, he had, I believe, it was 115 points, which is career high in goals and assists. And obviously, phenomenal season. And even in Columbus, he's still playing well. And there's so many different ways in which he was able to create offense. And he's such a key offensive contributor in so many different ways. We know how skilled of a playmaker and pass first player is because he's so skilled in terms of his instincts and how well he's able to control so many different elements. And there's even times he's not necessarily a true defensive player, but he can play defensively on even strength if you need him to. He doesn't play in the PK, obviously, but you're getting a guy who can finish. He could play in the power play. He could play at even strength in a dynamic way. He could score. He can finish. He could play against quality competition while also scoring. This was a very well-rounded player in terms of how he played the game. And it's obviously devastating because the hockey community is going to really miss him, not only on the ice, but off the ice. Because more importantly than his on ice play, he was a special human being. I didn't know him personally, obviously, but looking through the reports and looking through the charity work and all the things he's done for kids off the ice as well, you just see that he's one of a kind. And it's rare to find that. But going back to his on ice play, I love his distribution, and that's why I've always been one of the bigger fans of his game is because of his playmaking, not necessarily his goal scoring, because you don't necessarily see that pop, especially as a 5'9" player. You're not necessarily going to see a ton of goal scoring pop, at least right away. You've seen it more in recent years with his goal scoring elements, but I like watching him for the sake of his playmaking more than anything else, just from the raw eye, not even including analytics or anything like that. Just as an actual fan and studying him, I love watching him make plays because he makes plays that are so difficult, look so easy. And it's so hard to do that, especially in small areas. He's such a skilled distributor in small areas. He's not afraid to get within a few feet of his teammates and still pass the puck and defer it off to a teammate. He can do that, and he can do it so well and keep the puck flat on the ice and maintain poise while doing it. So, anyway, there's a lot of different elements that intertwine his game, and the pass first game has always been fascinating to watch when talking about him, how well he is able to play, and how skilled of a player he actually was. So rest in peace to Johnny Hockey and his brother Matthew Gaudreau.